Hello, welcome back. Today I got something pretty dang cool, I think. We're going to be looking at an IV start kit that was manufactured, let's see, March 1957. There we go. So it's an old IV set. It's got a lot of cool instructions markings on the boxes, but I wanted to compare it with a modern IV start kit just to see how they've changed over the years, especially because this was likely related to like early civil defense type stuff, according to the guy who I got it from. So yeah, I wanted to get started, and we'll look first at this modern IV start kit. Let me see. So obviously it's in plastic instead of a box, but that's not saying all old IVs were in a box. There we go. Oh, all right, so you get a tourniquet, wrap around the arm. You get just a little bit of tape to secure everything. This is Tegaderm, so you put this over the IV site to protect it from infection and to secure it, and then there's also a thing here to put the date when you apply it. So when you're get everything that's peeled off, it's just clear on your arm. A little bit of gauze and some chlorhexidine scrub. So how this works is you pinch it right there. You might be able to see the liquid in there. It's a disinfectant, so you pinch it and then you scrub, and a combination of the chlorhexidine and the friction kind of makes it a lot cleaner than just using like alcohol or something like that. Then, of course, the needle, I'm just using a 20 gauge inch needle. 20 gauge 1-inch needle, let's see. Okay, and these ones are pretty cool, because they're modern. I'm in nursing school now, and in school you only get to practice with the cheap old stuff. But these, you see there's this here. It's really nice and easy to hold in your fingers. And yeah, you can take the lid off, and you can see here, let's see. I don't know if it'll... All right, so you can see. All right, so you can see here this pink part, and then there's the needle, and there's a catheter. So if you slide this off the needle, sorry, it's going to be blurry. You can see the plastic catheter is, extends off the needle. So normally you would, prepare, clean everything up, select a vein, then you would insert, slide this off, then as you bring it back, you click that button, and the needle retracts inside. You can see the spring in there now. And now there's no needle. You can't accidentally get poked or anything like that. Then this is left in your arm with the bendy bit of plastic on the catheter here. Also, blood doesn't come out. This has a one-way valve essentially in here, so that this can just be sitting, not for long because of the risk of infection, but this can sit in your arm or your hand in the vein, and it won't be leaking out blood. So that's a super quick overview of a modern IV start kit. I'm not entirely sure what to expect out of this thing, but let's take a look. Okay, so we've got our kit here. Let's see, it says, this apparatus consists of a drip chamber, plastic tubing, needle adapter, recipient needle, clamp, and airway cannula. Fluid path, end connectors, and needles are sterile and pyrogen-free. Manufactured by the RK Laros Company and in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, USA. If you look them up, they have a really interesting history regarding what they kind of provided throughout this time period, throughout the Vietnam War, and stuff like that. I believe they... Alright, so on the side here, take the disc in both hands and bend it down over the center. Place the tubing in the left hand, and with right thumb and forefinger, squeeze the disc around the tubing. Hold full disc between thumb and forefinger, then bend into V. The flow of solution is now completely shut off. To control, spread the V to increase the flow of solution, or bend disc to a sharper angle to reduce the flow. Nowadays we just have little plastic clips or a roller. It rolls a little disc up and pinches. Instructions for stock number, blah blah blah. Let's see, it says it's sterile, non-pyrogenic, and ready to use. It is complete with recipient needle and airway cannula. It must not be cleaned and re-sterilized if reaction due to pyrogens is to be avoided. Fluid path, end connectors, recipient needle, and airway cannula are sterile and pyrogen free. And then it goes through a bunch of instructions there. So something interesting is the first like plastic catheter IV, like what I showed you, was invented in 1950 and it's the Rochester plastic needle. So I'm not sure if this has, if this is going to have a plastic catheter on it, and that's something I'm really interested in. Despite the fact that it was invented before, that doesn't necessarily mean that it was fully adopted. Before this, you know, they would just have reusable metal needles that when you're done, you'd take it out, sterilize it, and then inspect the needle, shave it down, or file it down back to being sharp, and then reuse it. So the catheter obviously made it way more safe and disposable. You know, you only use it once, you're not going to spread infection or disease or anything like that, and you're not going to, you know, have a busted up needle in your arm. So let's get this open. All right, so this part, let's see. Okay, that's really cool. So this obviously has the tubing and the drip chamber, which I didn't have an example of. It's glass. The tubing's, you know, plastic as you would expect. And then there's that. It looks like there's a little piece of cotton or something in there that maybe it had alcohol or some type of disinfectant. But you gotta keep the, you know, obviously you put a cap on it so nothing can get inside, and then you're not putting that inside a person. This is an interesting part because this is a harder rubber, or a harder plastic, and this is more of a stretchy rubber, which I kind of like. I can see how that would be useful if people are moving, you know, this gets like stuck or tagged on something, it doesn't immediately just yank out. So as I said, this is glass. Nowadays it's plastic because when you put this into your bag of liquid, whatever it is, whether it's saline or lactated ringers or a medication, you would push this. With the modern ones, you'd push it and then fill this up about halfway. With this, I suppose you would just pinch it and let it fill and then drip it down. And you can see the glass is beveled here. Actually, let's see, that part's plastic. It's glass and then it goes to plastic. So it's beveled so you can spike it into your bag. During this time period, they probably used glass bottles instead of plastic bags like we use now. So you would have to shove this into your bag and then potentially off gas or vent it so that the pressure doesn't build up. There's a bunch of gunk that this thing's leaving behind. I don't think it's sterile anymore with how yellow this tubing is. Probably not supposed to be yellow. So now we've got this. So this is a 17 gauge needle with airway, cannula, and clamp. Here's the disc that it was talking about. Here's your needle. And here's another needle, I think. Let's see. So you pop this open. That is a serious needle. Then you would pop that off. Make sure you don't, you know, poke yourself when you're playing with needles. Okay, so it looks like you would insert that there and then plug that in when you're ready. So it would be really important because this doesn't have, you can see all the way through it. I don't know if I can get the angle, but this doesn't have a valve. So as soon as this goes in, you're gonna be pouring blood everywhere. So you can either put pressure above where this is or be quick Also, this doesn't screw on like most modern ones do. It just pushes in. So if that pops off, again, you're leaking fluid and blood and everything. Now I want to look at this green tube. So there's a bunch of cotton coming out of it. And yeah, there's a needle right in there. So let's pop that. And yeah, there's another needle, but it doesn't have the hub, like the connector hub. It's got quite a wide, let's see, bezel on the end there. Bevel, not bezel. Oh no, I know what it is. Okay. All right, so that's the airway cannula that it mentioned. So when you have this thing in a glass bottle, well, it's not gonna flow into your blood vessel, into your body, because there's no air going into that bottle. So the pressure keeps it all in there. So then you would use this needle to go, so like if that's inside a bottle, you'd use this needle kind of off to the side, potentially, or even in the top, depending on the type of bottle that you would have, to allow air to go in and allow that fluid to flush. That makes way more sense. And there's this, which the instructions on the box say to use. So this is probably how you adjust your flow rate. So take the disc in both hands and bend down towards the center, just like the picture. Don't know how far to go, but place the tubing in the left hand with the right thumb and forefinger. Squeeze the disc around the tubing. Okay. Hold the folded disc between the thumb and forefinger and bend into a V. Okay, so then it's just holding it pinched. So now the tubing is pinched off pretty much all the way. Then if I want it to flow a little bit, control the flow rate, you just unpinch. And then if you just want it open, you just take it off. That's a pretty, obviously it's not the best way. It could fail pretty easily, and there are certain medications that you certainly do not want to give quickly through an IV. So, not the best, but that's a pretty smart way to control kind of the flow rate through this tubing. I think it's interesting that with modern IVs, you get the tubing separate, but you get everything to clean the site and protect the IV site and prevent infection all in one package. Whereas with this older thing, you would need to have, some alcohol pads or another way to clean it, and you would need to go grab some tape or something to tape this down so it doesn't just fall out. But the older one comes with the tubing in it, whereas the modern ones don't. You have to get them separately, and you usually put on another apparatus here called a saline lock to kind of extend this and make it easier to work with. But you don't always need tubing, especially if you are in the ICU or something like that. You'll have IVs, and not all of them will have tubing hooked up to it. Sometimes it's just there in case an IV fails, or in case they just need to push a medication through that isn't compatible with things going through your other IV or things like that, because certain medications and certain fluids aren't compatible and can't be used in the same tubing. So you can see how kind of the philosophy has changed, where this can be used for something quick. You just pull out the needle and maybe clean them up, poke them, and connect the fluid and go. Whereas with this, it's more long-term. You can put it in, you secure it with the Tegaderm, and you add a bunch of stuff onto here, and you make sure it's flush so it doesn't clot, and you do a lot more stuff, and they'll last a lot longer with this, and you won't have a bunch of irritation by this little piece of plastic, rubbing on the inside of your blood vessels. Won't hurt as bad and cause as much inflammation and damage as this metal needle. And this pack is out 7 years after the invention of this style of catheter, a plastic catheter Probably not as flexible as this, but that had already been invented. So yeah, this was probably for like a fallout shelter, or I'm not 100% sure. If you got any ideas, I would love to hear them, and you can comment down below. And I'd love it if you would subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. But I'd love it if you would subscribe and do all those things that you're supposed to do on a YouTube video. So thanks, and I'll see you next time.